Hi everyone, Dr. Scott here. Today I want to talk to you about the documented argument and the audience that you're going to write to for that assignment. The documented argument is a research paper where you identify a topic in your major or an issue or a topic related to a community that you know of. And what you're going to do is you're going to research that topic, and you've already done some of that research for the annotated bibliography and literature review, and you'll use that research to persuade your audience to consider your ideas or to take some kind of action. Over the next few weeks, you're going to learn about different components of a documented argument or an argumentative essay, and you'll be building your essay as we go. So I want to make this really clear. Use the homework activities over the next few weeks to work on your documented argument. They're an opportunity for you to work on your essay. When you're asked to write a rebuttal or what we call a counter argument to your documented argument, or to design a data visualization, do that in the context of your documented argument, because you'll be asked to include that with that final essay anyhow. Just like you should definitely use the research that you did for the annotated bibliography and the literature review for your documented argument. As you work on your essay, you'll want to save the document in whatever format that works best for you. But whatever you do, you'll need to be able to export your essay as a Microsoft Word document. I'll show you how to do some tasks in Google Docs and in Microsoft Word, but your draft and your finished documented argument will need to be submitted as Word documents. You should have online access to Microsoft Word through Office 365, and you can reach out to the IT folks if you have any problems or if you need help getting that set up. But for today, let's talk about the audience for the documented argument. To be clear, your instructor is one of the audiences for the final essay in the class. They're the person that is grading your final project, so you can't really ignore them as an audience. But they're not the only audience for this assignment, and there's a reason for that. Research and writing studies and research that's produced by people that study learning have made it pretty clear that writers make better choices when they have a clear idea of who their audience is, or they have a clearer idea of who their audience is. You may not know exactly who's going to be reading your essay, but having a sense of who the people are that might be reading it, you make better choices for that audience when you have them in mind. A general audience is something that we talk about a lot when we talk about who are you going to be writing towards, but a general audience it's not really a thing. There's always some kind of subgroup of folks that are going to read something or that you should have in mind when you're writing. So thinking about a general audience, if you're like, well, I'll just be writing to a general audience, this assignment and what we're doing today is going to help you think a little bit more about that and to be able to put some details and some specifics to who your audience is for the documented argument. Today's mini assignment is going to help you think a little bit more about who your audience is for the documented argument and to be able to put some of those specifics and details about that audience together. Knowing who your audience is helps you make good decisions. Like I said earlier, you have a clear sense of who you're writing for, so you have a clear idea of what choices you need to make as a writer. Later this week, we're going to talk about organization and the different pieces that need to be in the documented argument. Your audience is going to help you identify what pieces need to be there and how much time you need to spend on developing the context of the problem versus maybe suggesting a solution. So the audience, and being able to identify who that audience is, it's going to help you make decisions later on in the writing process. For your discussion board activity today, I want you to develop what we call an audience profile for your documented argument. I'll talk about what that needs to include in a minute, but first I want to ask you some questions that can help you identify who that audience might be. So let me switch screens and we'll talk about some of those questions. So let me walk you through some questions that can help you identify who your audience might be, or maybe some potential audiences. You're going to generate some ideas here, and you can change things and tweak things a little bit. And if you're having problems with this, I strongly recommend you reach out to the Writing Center or you talk to your instructor. So some questions to think about as you're kind of developing an audience. One, you start with your topic. What is the topic that you're working with? Who needs to know about it? Who does it impact? Who can actually do something about the issue? Who's like a gatekeeper or a stakeholder that will have some kind of control or some power to do something about the issue that you've noted? When I asked, who does this impact? There might be issues that impact folks in a community, but they don't even really know what's a problem. So identifying who is impacted and asking yourself, do folks even know it's really an issue to address? So your topic is where you begin to identify that audience. Next thing to think about is, what is your purpose? So if you know what your topic is and you're starting to generate some ideas about your audience, what is it that you want that audience to do? Do you just want them to be aware of something? What do you want them to do with that awareness? What kind of actions do you want them to take place? Is this something that they need to vote on? Is this something that they need to support when it comes up for a vote? Maybe it's a funding thing that needs to happen. Maybe you've identified a city council or some kind of small government group that you want to persuade and you want them to act upon it. What is it that you want them to do with the information that you're giving them? Those are important questions as you develop your audience. So I want to say a few words about something that might be a little controversial, but hopefully not completely out there. We live in a time where folks can be pretty irrational about what they argue. And I'm not talking about any particular topic or any particular, although we could talk about examples, or any particular perspective. But you can't persuade some people. Some people have already kind of decided, this is what I'm going to believe, even if the evidence tells me otherwise. One thing to keep in mind as you're developing an audience is that you should be trying to persuade reasonable folks. Sometimes that's in short supply, but your audience should have the presumption that the folks that you're trying to persuade are reasonable people that will listen to evidence, that will not react violently when you tell them something that they might disagree with. Let's start there with an assumption about the audience. The questions that I just talked about, you should definitely consider those. But sometimes, and we see it frequently now, folks get really angry about things that are kind of uncontroversial. And that's something to steer clear of, those kinds of folks, for the audience that you put together for your documented argument. So in your discussion board today, I want you to write a profile of your audience that addresses these questions here. So you've identified an audience. That's what the questions in the previous slide were talking about. Here, I want you to identify that audience and then to think about who are they, and get in there and describe your audience a little bit. Some questions that you might consider is what they know about the topic. So if you're talking about a topic in your community or a topic that's related to your discipline or your field, what does your audience already know about that topic? If you're writing to other undergrads that are considering the same major that you're in, you can assume that they know roughly what you know. What assumptions or preconceptions does your audience have about your topic? So if we're thinking about a community subject, what assumptions, what biases, we have that down here later, but what biases, assumptions, preconceptions might they have about your topic? Is your audience multicultural? What kind of religious background do they have? What ethnic backgrounds might they have? What values does your audience have? What experience or background might they have had in relation to that topic? Will they expect you to address specific topics in your essay? What kind of evidence do you think your readers will respond favorably to? So now that you have a topic and you've identified a potential audience or audiences that's related to that topic, folks that need to know about this information, people that can act upon that information, and then you also have some questions that help you think about some details and some ways that you can describe that audience, what they value, what expectations they have, what experiences they might have with the topic. Your next task is to write your audience profile. Now, I'm going to give you two options here. You can write a traditional kind of 350-word profile that describes your audience using the questions that I've asked you. You can kind of just get in there and describe that audience. You can also do something a little bit more creative. You can create a hypothetical person, give them a name, you can give them an entire backstory, and address the questions that I've asked in this video. You're going to use this profile a bit, whatever tactic you choose, the more creative approach or the more traditional, here's what you need to know about this audience. You're going to use this profile a bit. It's going to help you make choices. I mentioned that a few times here, but making sure that your writing is tailored to a specific audience is a very important skill to learn in your development as a writer. That knowledge about your audience is going to help you make good decisions later on. It's going to help you understand and make a good choice when it comes to how much background information you need to provide about a topic, what kinds of details and technical information that you're going to need to provide in your documented argument, the kind of strategies that you're going to use to be persuasive, even how you structure your argument, something we're going to talk about for the next lesson. Your audience helps you make those decisions. So post your audience profile to the discussion board, and by the Friday of week 4, I'd like you to respond to a peer and ask some questions about that audience, some additional questions that they might need to consider. Only respond to somebody that has not received a response so far, and have fun with this. Think of an audience, be a little creative, but get some description and some detail around who your audience might be for the documented argument. Bye for now.